Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this November 5, 2013 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, as we open the news, we go first to Europe, where the European Union says it has agreed to resume membership talks with Turkey. And friends, after we play this first video report for you, I'm going to remind those of you who know already, and those who don't know, I'm going to explain who Turkey is in relationship to the people of the United States. I mean the main stock of the people of the United States and the people of the United Kingdom. Turkey first applied for full membership of what was then the European Economic Community in 1987. I believe you'll hear the reporter say that in this video clip that we have for you. The EU's European Affairs ministers meeting in Luxembourg said the talks would restart today on November 5, after being stalled for 3 years. James Reynolds has this report.
EU foreign ministers search for their places, but there is no name card for Turkey. The country is still waiting on the outside. In 1987, Turkey applied to join what was then the European Economic Community. But formal accession talks only began in 2005. They've not made much progress. Turkey's Prime Minister, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, says he expects his country to get in by the time it celebrates its centenary in 2023. If not, he implies, his country may give up the idea altogether. And inside Turkey, this impatience has begun to show. Support for EU membership, once overwhelming, is now mixed.
I support the idea of joining the European Union. We don't need them economically, but for the development of democracy and human rights in Turkey. They're an obvious choice to pick.
I don't believe we need to join the European Union. They're afraid the Turkish youths will go to Europe and increase their unemployment figures, but we've raised an educated young generation.
But in June this year, the country faced danger at home. The government confronted demonstrators in a series of mass protests in Istanbul and Ankara. A recent EU report criticised the Turkish authorities for using excessive force against protesters. Turkey defended its actions. And on Sunday, its forces found themselves facing Kurdish protesters on the border with Syria. Some in Europe don't like the idea of the EU sharing a border with a country at war. Critics in France and Germany in particular still see Turkey as too big, too poor, and not European enough to be allowed to join the EU. James Reynolds, BBC News, Istanbul.
Thank you, James Reynolds, in Istanbul. Friends, Turkey. I told you I'd tell you, I'd remind those of you who know already who Turkey is in relation to the people of the United States and the people of the UK. And for those of you who don't know, according to the Bible, and when you trace it, the people of Turkey, who are descendants, modern-day descendants of old ancient Esau, the brother of Jacob, the two sons of Isaac. Isaac had twin sons. Esau was about to come out first, but Jacob grabbed his brother by one of the limbs and pulled him back in, and Jacob supplanted him and came out as the firstborn. But the handmaid had put a string around Esau's hand to show that he stuck his hand out first, and he would have been the firstborn had Jacob not wrestled him back in and insisted on coming out first. kind of a funny story in a way, yes, but it had a lot of implications as to what Jacob would do with his brother later when it came to the birthright. Because Esau, having put his hand out first, was considered firstborn. But he sold that birthright, it not meaning much to him later for, as you've heard the Bible story, he sold it for a bowl of soup to Jacob. And after Jacob wrestled with God one night and proved himself to be a man of great perseverance, God was impressed with him. He changed his name later on to Israel. Now, remember this, Esau, who was the firstborn but sold the birthright to Jacob, was a twin brother of Jacob whose name was changed to Israel. So you have Esau and Jacob, twin brothers. So you've got modern-day Turkey, a brother of Jacob whose name was changed to Israel. So modern-day Turkey, Esau, is related to all of Israel's sons. He had 12 sons, so he's related to the 12 tribes of Israel. One of those tribes, the tribe of Joseph, the son Joseph, had two sons who God said would take the name of Joseph. So Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are considered half-tribes who carry the name fully of Joseph as if Ephraim and Manasseh were full-fledged sons of Israel, not grandsons and, one step removed, but they're counted as sons, as if they were Joseph. They carry the name of Joseph. Now, I point that out to you because we can trace today Ephraim to Great Britain, to the UK. We can trace Manasseh to the United States. So you've got the United States and you've got the United Kingdom, the U.S. and the UK. You've got them as the two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Manasseh and Ephraim, the two sons of Joseph. It's usually said Ephraim and Manasseh because Ephraim is considered to have a little bit higher notch standing in a certain way, although Manasseh sure holds a good carrot against Ephraim in many, many, many ways. And God, just because God gave certain blessings to them both in a different way. But these two sons are counted as if they were Joseph, as if they were a full-fledged son of Israel. Now, I mention that because we're going to talk about the United States and the United Kingdom, the U.S. and the U.K. as if they were Joseph, even though they're divided into Ephraim and Manasseh. Manasseh and Ephraim, Ephraim and Manasseh, the U.S. and the U.K. Now, as being counted as Joseph, one of the sons of Israel, Israel, who was Jacob, his name changed to Israel, being a twin brother of Esau, who's now modern-day Turkey. That makes Edom, Esau, Turkey, an uncle to the United States and the UK, the people of the United States and UK. We are a nephew, being that our father, Israel, was a brother to Esau. Esau and Israel, brothers. And so the relationship between the brother Esau to Israel's son Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, is that of an uncle to a nephew. We, U.S. and UK, are like the nephew. Esau, modern-day Turkey, like the uncle. So we've got Uncle Esau, Uncle Edom, Uncle Turkey over there. And we've got the United States and UK, the nephew, here. All right, I hope that helps you understand a little bit, because as you watch these news stories, then you understand the impact. The talks here, so far, Turkey is basically wanting to be a part of the EU, but they've been held in abeyance. And a good part of the reason why may be since Esau is so closely related to Israel. Esau is a brother of Israel, and he's the uncle of the 12 tribes of Israel. And the 12 tribes are basically, I was going to say scattered, and they were scattered and lost, but now we know where they are around the world. We at least know where they are, even though they in a certain sense, are scattered. We've got Reuben over in France. We've got Ephraim over in the UK. We've got Manasseh here in the United States. And we'll go through the others at another time. But you've got the sons of Israel around the globe as the nephew of Uncle Esau. So with Esau being so closely related to Israel, eventually the EU will consist of 5 countries from the east, 5 countries from the west, who will have different internal policies and things such that they will not get along. The Bible compares them to iron and miry clay. 5 toes of iron, 5 toes of clay on the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, had the dream about in Daniel 2 that Daniel interpreted for the king. And they'll give their power, those 10 toes, 5 from the east, 5 from the west, they'll give their power to a beast for a short time. That 1 hour, Mr. Herbert Armstrong has explained, don't try to divide that hour up into the prophecy about the day. It's not going to mean just 15 days. Probably going to be longer than that. It just means for a short time. You know, that's basic. It's an idiomatic expression, the way it's used in the Bible, not to be taken overly literally. But they give their power to the beast for an hour, for a short period of time. We've had that explained to us by inspiration to God's end-time apostle. Now, if some of you don't understand that, you're welcome to write me. I'll be happy to lead you to material that'll help you understand that more fully. But that beast power is going to be composed of 5 nations from the east, 5 nations from the west. It's going to be very much, its goals and purposes is going to be very much against all of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's going to be against the UK. It's going to be against the US. It's going to eventually be against France, even though France is again buddying up to Assyria, to Germany, who will most likely be the head of that 10-nation combine that will revive the old Holy Roman Empire. Already has the monetary system for it. The EU headquarters out of Frankfurt. Frankfurt being the city where all of the German kings who were made emperors over the Holy Roman Empire in the past were coronated, were crowned right there in Frankfurt, where the headquarters for the euro is located in Frankfurt. And the ECB, the European Common Bank, the European Central Bank, ECB. And so, friends, they're not going to want any of Israel in there, and they're not going to want Israel's brother in there, Turkey. So Israel's brother is already, the God of this world is already holding back the brother of Israel, Esau, modern-day Turkey. Now, you know, Esau and Jacob, they had some conflicts. Esau was really angry at Jacob after he and his mother fooled their father, Isaac, with putting hair all over Jacob and bringing him his favorite porridge, which his mother, Jacob's mother and Esau's mother, knew how to make the way Esau would make it. Esau might have learned how to make it from Mom, and so Mom really knew how to make it. Isaac was confused by it, or was deceived by it, to think that, well, this certainly is the soup that Esau usually makes, and he felt the hair on the guy's arm, but the voice is not the voice of Esau. But he let the soup and the hair fake him off, deceive him. And so when Esau found out what Jacob had done, whoa, was he angry. And then they separated for years. And yet they are brothers. And we are brothers with them. And we've had some modern day getting along. We've also had some very modern day not getting along with Esau. And of course, even within Esau's torn within itself. We've been showing many a news report in the past several months about how Turkey, modern day Esau, has been having internal strife. And you've seen that. We've played those stories. I don't need to rehearse that one with you unless you haven't been watching us on a regular basis. And I encourage you to do that. Be sure we're following that instruction, friends, that Jesus Christ gave us, to be watching world events and praying over them. And by doing that, Christ says, if you really put your heart into that, you'll be accounted worthy to escape the great tribulation to come. Now, before we go to this next story, let me put our chart up on the screen for just a moment, our chart from Revelation 6 that shows the first 6 seals of the 7 seals of Revelation. The first 4 being what's often been called the 4 horses of Revelation, the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, the pale horse, the white horse of deception, religious deception, of false Christ, false apostles, the red horse of war and rumors of war, the black horse of famine, the pale horse of pestilence, disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt, seismic conditions, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground like gale force winds of all kinds, hurricanes, cyclones, even tsunamis and the like, and commotions on the ground, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, all that kind of thing. And then the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation. We've had the first 4 seals operating for a long time. The next major thing to happen after we have, well, actually Mr. Armstrong said the next major thing to happen will be these 2 last seals, the 3rd seal and the 4th seal, will really escalate. We'll have much more famine, greater famines. And friends, you should see it in a way as close to the door. We've had the worst drought here in the United States in over half a century. Not drought never this bad since 1956. That's quite a few years ago. Some of you weren't even born then. Some of you were just, and if you were, some of you were just young kids at that time, because we're talking about more than 50 years ago. So if you were alive then, you were at least 50 years old, a little more than 50 years old. And so we haven't had a drought that as bad as it is now, especially in the main parts of the United States where the cattle are raised and food is harvested. We are going to see the impact. And it's not just here, it's worldwide. Russia's having it, the UK is having it. They're having upset weather, in some places not enough rain, in other places too much rain. And too much rain can be, in many ways, as bad as not enough. When it comes to growing food, it can wipe your food production out. And that's the main important thing about agriculture and weather, is so that you can produce food. But let's go back to that chart just for another moment. And Mr. Armstrong said the 3rd seal and the 4th seal escalation will be the next major thing in prophecy, and that acts as a prelude, as the music playing before an act, before Act 5, seal number 5, the Great Tribulation, the next very major seal to be opened up. Or we understand it's been opened, we know what it is, but it's the next major event to happen after we see famine and pestilence to such a degree that 1/3 of the United States, the population of the United States, dies from famine. 1/3 of the population of the United States, well, they die from both famine and disease epidemics, and 1/3 dies from the sword, the red horse of war. And that'll precede the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, which will be a time of round 3 of World War. Because World War, as Mr. Armstrong well put it, began when we called it round 1, World War I, and then there was a recess between World War round 1 and World War round 2, and now we're in a recess between round 2 and round 3. Round 3 is the next thing to happen. We'll call it World War III. That'll occur during that 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, a time of martyrdom, a time of the worst trouble upon the world has ever known, and so bad there will never be a time of trouble again after it like that, ever again. As you can read that, if you want to read that, it's in Matthew 24, and I believe it's around verse 22, if I'm remembering correctly. think I can find that for you pretty quickly if you want to look it up. Well, verse 22 says, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved alive. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Jesus Christ promises to intervene just before man would annihilate mankind. He also promises in another place. Let's go to verse 32. It says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. We're in Matthew 24. Learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. And friends, when we see the escalation of these seals of Revelation, and we've been seeing that since last summer, and when we see famine, and when we see the pale horse, pestilence, seismic conditions, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground, and Tarike. I forgot to mention that one. That was another term Jesus Christ used to describe the pale horse, meaning troubled waters. And that can mean both. It can mean troubled waters literally, or it can mean troubled waters figuratively. And the examples in the lexicon are mobs and seditions. We've seen a lot of that in Turkey with the rioting that's been happening there in the past several months, and over that park that they don't want to be turned into a commercial center. That a lot of the population doesn't want to have it turned into a commercial center. But verse 46 of Matthew 24 says, blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he comes, shall find so doing, when you'll be ready and having been watching. As verse 42, we back up to verse 42, when he says, blessed will you be if you're found doing these things. Verse 42 says, watch, therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. And if we go over to verse 36 of Luke 21, that's a parallel chapter to Matthew 24. Friends, I know I'm covering a lot of things, talking to you from the Bible tonight, but our news stories are related to the Bible. I've got a few more news stories. We'll better hurry up so we can get to those. Let's just go to verse 36 of Luke 21 quickly. And Luke 21, verse 36 says, watch you therefore and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. So he promises if you watch and pray, watch these world events and pray over them, put your heart into it, and thy kingdom come, and help these poor people that are in these dire situations, and you can be accounted worthy to escape it. If you want to know more, stay tuned, especially tune in on the weekend, because we're going to be hitting things a little harder. Now, this weekend I'm doing something for brethren of our church that gives a wonderful instruction by Carlton Smith on how to prepare for the Passover. I'll be playing that this weekend. But let's get back to news. Our next story, we go to Bangladesh, where, let me show you that chart again for just a second. The second column over, the red, where you see the red bar there, that depicts the red horse that Revelation 6 describes as the second seal, a red horse. And Jesus Christ described it in Matthew 24 and Luke 21 and Mark 13 as war and rumors of war, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, world war and rumors of war. And this next story certainly relates to that red horse in a very extreme way. Today in Bangladesh, a court has sentenced at least 152 soldiers to death over a bloody border guard mutiny in 2009. Let's go to that story.
It's said to be the biggest trial in Bangladesh's history. Mutineers in the dock, but there were so many of them, a special makeshift court had to be built. Many of these former border guards have already been jailed by military courts for their role in that violent mutiny. 271 of them were eventually acquitted of murder, torture and other charges by this civilian court. But for the rest, the prosecution won their argument.
In this verdict, some of the accused were sentenced to death, some were given life in jail and terminal sentences, others were acquitted.
It was the morning of the 25th of February, 2009. For the next 30 hours or so, these disgruntled soldiers went on the rampage. Citing pay and other grievances, including mistreatment, soldiers killed their commanding officers and dumped their bodies in sewers and shallow graves. As the uprising spread to other army bases, Bangladesh was gripped by panic. Only after direct talks with the Prime Minister did it all end. Nearly 5 years have passed. Justice and some closure for the victims' families. The powerful military also demanded the harshest possible punishment. Now they have it. But international rights groups have raised questions from the start. Nearly 50 of the accused in this case were not here in court. They died in custody, allegedly from torture. New York-based Human Rights Watch has called for a retrial. Defense lawyers say they will appeal. But there seems to be no simple path to justice for such a bloody episode. Mahfouz Sadiq, BBC News, Dhaka.
And friends, we only have a couple of minutes left to go, and I want to get quickly to one last story for tonight. A peace conference in Syria has been delayed. The UN Arab League envoy on Syria has said that a peace conference he had hoped to hold in Geneva this month has been delayed, but he's still striving for a summit by the end of the year.
A big diplomatic presence in Geneva, not just the United States and Russia, but Britain, France and China, as well as Syria's closest neighbours, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq and Turkey. The aim to finally set a date for peace talks. But after a very long day, it became clear it was not to be. And the UN's special envoy couldn't hide his disappointment.
This is not sustainable. The only solution to the humanitarian crisis is a political solution to the crisis. And, in addition to what we have been saying, what the Secretary General has been saying forever, really, since the beginning of this crisis, that is that there is no military solution.
Mr. Brahimi said nothing dramatic had happened to cause the delay, but the situation inside Syria is dramatic. The UN says 40% of Syria's population, 9 million people, are now in need of aid. The conflict has lasted more than 2.5 years.
Diplomats say they still hope to hold a peace conference before the end of this year. But the differences which have prevented negotiations until now haven't gone away. The Syrian government doesn't want to leave power. The opposition can't agree on a leader. And neither were present here in Geneva. Instead, they are busy on the battlefield. Imogen Folks, BBC News, Geneva.
Hey friends, we've got a minute to go. I want to just tell you, roll it in the background while I tell you about what India did today. They launched an unmanned spacecraft on a 9-month journey to Mars. The mission will put a satellite into the planet's orbit and carry out scientific research. It's being hailed as a huge step for India in the area of science and technology. So far, only attempts by the U.S., Russia, and Europe have been successful in reaching the red planet. China tried it last year and they failed. The project will cost more than $70 million that some say would have been better spent elsewhere. I would like to, maybe I can show you this report tomorrow night. We've got to sign off. We're out of time. Thanks for joining me tonight. God willing, and the creek don't rise, friends. We'll be back again tomorrow night, Wednesday night, for our next edition of news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.